the
Yeah.
meeting to order. Becky, do you want to do that?
Can you do that again?
We're going to call the meeting to order. President Bill DeSmet, Vice President Carrie Nicholson,
Here.
Secretary Lisa Middleton,
Here.
Treasurer Larry Williams,
Here.
Trustee Brent Dawson,
Here.
Trustee Shauna Gamble,
Here.
Trustee Richard Lindsay.
Here.
We'll have our customary moment of silence. Richard, can you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Support.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? So we'll move on to 3. Members of the audience may address the board on agenda items only. So we'll move on to 4, academic highlight, literacy at Walters Elementary.
Paul et al.
Good evening. Thank you for having us this month and tonight. At Walters this year, we have been working really hard on literacy. Not that we haven't been working hard on literacy all the years, but certainly we've been trying to take a look at data and taking a look at how we can focus our energy in some different ways. I don't want to steal too much thunder. I have quite a bit of staff here tonight, and a couple folks are going to come up and they're going to speak and share what we've been working on this year, and I'm really excited about it. And I'll let them kind of do the talking for us. So I'm going to have Kim Rugg come up. She's the reading specialist that we have at Walters School, and she's going to start us off.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here to share some of the positive things that are happening in literacy at Walters. So yeah, we're going to talk about word work and literacy instruction, some initiatives that have been going on within the district, and then Walters we've been trying out some of the new things that have been talked about and discussed at Gordon. They've already started some word work and words their way. So it all started with Leslie Hoblitz and her paraprofessional at Gordon. And Leslie has been a proponent for wanting Words Their Way to be a part of our literacy program district-wide. And so a couple of years ago, our then curriculum director, Don Beck, and Leslie got together to investigate a little more about Words Their Way. One of the common themes throughout the hallways in all of our elementary buildings and maybe beyond has been the spelling within writing. You know, what we're seeing and noticing, some of the patterns and things that students still do not have in place as they're moving up through the grade levels. And it was a concern in all buildings. So as I got to work with PLC, Julie Underhill, literacy specialist at Hughes, and Leslie Hoblitz at Gordon, when we would get to meet in our PLC groups, we would have a discussion about what we're noticing in our buildings and what teachers have been saying that's a concern. What programs should we use to help propel students and move them forward? What, should we be doing as teachers? It was just a common question throughout. So Leslie, being a proponent of Words Their Way, she went to her building and she talked to the teachers there, and they were, yes, we know this is something that we need to do. It's a lot of work. Words Their Way is a program that takes a lot of organization because it's differentiated. It is a developmental program, so you're taking the students right where they are as a speller, or the patterns that they understand, or not even the rules per se, but just what's happening in the words. Because we have a little tidbit later that shows you that a lot of the rules that we teach children or that we learned when we were in school, they don't apply not even 50% of the time. So how do we help students realize in their own writing, as a speller, when it looks right or sounds right or what needs to happen? So we went over and talked about Words Their Way. I came back, talked to Paul,
And then Renee Lasky is literacy paraprofessional at Walters. She was on board, she kept hearing it as well. And so then we went to the teachers and we're like, listen, what do you think about this? Oh, sorry, next slide. Yeah, oh, so here you go. Here's a parent letter. We decided that word study was important, that no longer did we want just a list of spelling words and take them home, rote memorization, come back, and geez, we're still not seeing that, the data or the shift to help our students move forward. So the teachers at Walters all agreed that this is the shift that we need to make, and so we sent home a letter to parents discussing a little bit of the research and what we wanted to do to help students in this area of literacy. And so that went home. Forgot my little slides. Here they are. Here are all those rules where this is what I presented to 4th and 5th grade. Why are we doing word study? Why are we using magnet letters in 5th grade? And then I talked a little bit about the research that for something new to occur, our brain, especially if there's a tangle, to untangle it, we have to encounter things in several ways. And we have to encounter it a lot and several times. So it says there are 923 words that break the I before E rule. Only 44 words actually follow that rule. So this is what I shared with 4th and 5th grade just to try to get that buy-in. And look at like the homophones and all of that. That's a whole nother ball game. And there are some groups in our building right now that are working on homophones, and I think 3rd grade is working on those. So that's fun, but try to explain that. Oh yeah, it looks like tear. You have to figure out how you're using the word. So that all happened as well. So then back to Leslie Hoblitz. Today we're mostly going to talk about Words Their Way started it all. And then Leslie and her paraprofessional Becky, they wanted to do more than that. They wanted a tiered program within their building with differentiation that went along with the Words Their Way. So they used the Making Words program, and it's magnet letters. Students are interacting with magnet letters, and they have whiteboards. They're using expo markers. They're writing the words. They're coming up with sentences. So it's differentiated 30 minutes per week. It's tiered. So all of 1st grade, or like Mrs. Rupp's room, would be working. She'd have a group, I would have a group, and then our literacy paraprofessional would have a group. And they would all be working on those patterns in words that showed that was their area of need. And the way that we found that area of need was through the spelling inventory. So we went, talked to Paul, talked to teachers. Paul was on board. He ordered the Words Their Way books for those teachers that didn't have them, that hadn't started using that program yet. And then he ordered the magnet letters and the Making Words books so that we could start that tiered intervention in our building too. Teachers were really enjoying it. I mean, the students really like it. So we did that for about 2 months, and then we realized we're not seeing the shift that we were hoping to see. We were seeing it in their spelling inventory because that's the tool we use to assess them with. So where's that one? This is weird. There it is. So we would give a list of words that's through Words Their Way, and you have you have an early, elementary, and intermediate. I think there's 4 different assessments. So it would take you all the way up through 8th grade. Upper, and then I thought we found a 4th one, but there's just 3. So anyway, you would give it according to the student's grade level. But if they pass that one, you could definitely go up to the intermediate. So that's how developmental it is. And it takes, the patterns of words where the students are. So we did one of these assessments, or the teachers did, on all students, and then Renee or I would help them analyze it. From there, we would take each classroom and break them up into groups. So we have 3 separate groups, and it's really tiered and differentiated to meet the students' needs where they are. We used the Making Words book, and we had the Making Words, like I said, 30 minutes once a week is when the tiered intervention would take place. And then you do the spelling inventory 3 times a year. So this is kind of what it would look like. I know it's And that would be a lesson plan, like you would start with, make the word cat, and then change a letter to make the word bat. And then you might say, add a vowel to the end to make the word bait, so they're seeing those vowel changes. And we're using that terminology so that it sticks with them. The vowels, the digraphs, we're saying that because that's word study. So we were using that, and as I was beginning to say, we were not seeing the shift that we really wanted. So as the teachers and I got together once again, they're like, why can't you make it to go right with their sort? This kind of meets right where they are. It's loosely linked, but we would like it to go with their weekly word sort. Where's that one? Keep going. I'm going to have to go back to that stuff. So there's their weekly word sort. That's what the students will get for every 2 weeks. And you can see it's sometimes a clear pattern, or sometimes this one is within words, so you're going to have a lot of those vowel patterns in the middle are controlled vowels. So that would be what the word pattern is. It wasn't that closely linked with the making words, so guess what? We decided we're going to make lesson plans to link it closely and differentiate it even that closer to what the students are working on every 2 weeks. So that means more letters. This is where Mrs. Lasky comes in. She's in charge of all those letters. And it's just a lot more letters than what it had here.
Those letters there are start and get sorted so that we can put them in bags to get out to the teachers to give to the students, so the students have them when they're actually engaged in the lesson.
Yeah. And magnetic boards like inside markers. We want them interacting with words in a variety of ways. Yes, sure.
The word sort was testing them on different things and that they were learning. So in the, I forget what, make your own words or whatever.
So the making words, yeah.
Was that teaching, it's kind of like if you were teaching with that about U.S. history, but then testing them on European history, was that the kind of thing that they were still learning, but you couldn't tell because you weren't testing them on what they were learning?
Yep. Well, so we would look at that spelling inventory that we showed you, and we're like, okay, they're within word, and they're missing all of their vowel teams, okay? And so then we would go to the making word book, and we would find lessons that would coordinate with that skill, but they wouldn't be the exact word that they would be or words that they would be studying during their word sort in the classroom, okay? So we were thinking about just having some enrichment, we just want them to have some interaction with letters and words. We started out just thinking enrichment. Well, we didn't like that so much because we wanted it to be very, valued and to hit the mark right where they are. And that extra explicit instruction that they're getting 30 minutes of, why not have it on that exact sort that they're working on? So we decided that I would write the lesson plans to go along with the word sorts each week, and then Renee sorts all the letters, gets the lesson plans out to the teachers, and then, let's see, where are we? There's the spelling inventory. So, yeah. Am I going backwards?
Yeah, you guys are the...
Sorry, guys. I'm not a professional speaker. Okay. This is a funny, this is Renee. One day I walked in there and what are you doing? There were letters everywhere. Her shoes were off. Well, our librarian put that in the middle of all the letters because it is an undertaking. Plus, she sees groups of readers, and so this is fun. So they're again driven by data. We were looking at everything up to that point, decided we were going to try it this way. And if this works, I am sharing it with Leslie. I told her about this meeting today and how we appreciated all of her work, and she said, I'm just glad that you're extending, what we've already shared, and so we'll pay it forward if this turns out to be what we're hoping. So Words Their Way started it all with Leslie, and then, am I going the wrong way?
No, you're good.
Okay.
These are the lessons there.
Okay.
So we'll go back one more.
Okay.
There's the lesson that Kim designed.
Yeah.
So it goes back to what you were saying about the history thing before, where the lessons before were all almost good enough, but not precise enough.
Yeah.
So what we had to do is Kim went back and she redesigned the lessons very specifically to meet the kids at what their level is, to target them like at the bullseye instead of like at the outer edge of the bullseye.
Right.
That makes better sense.
Right, good. But I did follow the Making Words lesson plan format, but we're just putting in our own words now, and I made, we have little suggestions on what you can do if you finish early, and, and now I'm using that explicit language too, which wasn't so much. Whatever grade you're in, you're gonna hear digraphs, you're gonna hear blends, and we talk about those vowels constantly. Because believe it or not, a lot of them can't recall the long vowel or short vowel unless it's in there every day. I mean, I'm talking fifth grade too, they don't, I'll say, is that a long or short sounding vowel, and they're not always sure. So we knew we had to do something.
We have some examples of that, but the next slide here is some data that Mrs. Rupp wanted to share. So.
Yeah, Mrs. Rupp.
Okay, so I'm super excited about this. I'm gonna get up. So this is my class at the beginning of the year, and where it's yellow is an area of concern. And you can tell how it starts out with consonants, it goes into blends and digraphs, and then it gets a little into the tricky endings like the ed and the ing, and when to double the consonant. So this was in the first week of school. This was in December. My class has shifted almost completely to here. It is super, super amazing, and I'm so proud of them. My lowest reader only was able to get 3 points, and I'm pretty sure that child is now number 25. So they went up.
We had to take the names off.
They went up to 25. I have huge growth. So I've got kids that were 21 and now they're in the 51. I mean, they are able to make words so amazingly now. And I think it's this program.
And where that big bulk of orange is right where they are developmentally. That's where we would expect to see them.
This time of year.
Yeah.
And at last year when I did this is what my class looked like all year. They never made it here. I never got to see this growth with just this many that I really need to really hit some more. And then these guys are gonna get it because this is all the last part of the year. That's how I feel. And it's just super proud. I'm proud of the class.
And we have some video evidence to show, with both our teachers here, them engaging the students and how the kids are responding, so you can see them taking on that learning. There's really clear evidence of that.
Yeah, it's easier to see than me just talk about it, but just keep in mind as you're watching it too, it's developmental, and we've had to change throughout the school year to meet the needs, especially of our older students. So they started out with letters, and they were pretty cool with it at first, and then it was like, really, I'm in Latin and Greek root words. I don't need to have magnet letters, but, so let's see, there's, that's your room, right, Michelle?
Yeah, there's a picture of the kids at work. The next slide is the first video. I think I'm gonna have to go up there and have it. We have volume?
Maybe not.
No volume. Sadness. Okay, I will. Oh, okay. All right, we'll start over.
We're getting it.
And the long U sound.
There we go.
So let's review what sounds these letters make. Who knows what sound E makes? Betty. E and F. Good. How about the U? Good. Next letter. What do you hear, Megan? E and F. Good. Go ahead, Eli. Come. What about this letter? Go ahead, Livia. Good. Lily.
can see we're following the script, which is the lessons that we've created ourselves at Walters.
Like how you raised your hand when you got it. Lydia, can you come make cut for me? Can you use cut in a sentence? I haven't cut. Good. Would you say cut is a long view or a short view? Short. Good. Very good. Now see. Now we're going to add one letter. Can you make the word cute? What do you need to do to make cute? Ooh, I love it. Lily, what do we do to make cute? We added one letter. Now, use it in a sentence. I have a cute cat. Cute cat. I love it. Thank you. So when we added the E, the magic E, it makes the U say, what? U. Very good. All right.
All right, so we're gonna shoot. This one's a little shorter, it's only less than a minute.
Now we have a new word. Please take all your letters back up. New word. We have a 3-letter word, and I want you to make the word hug. Can somebody please come up and make hug? Finley, make hug for us. I like to hug my mom. I love that. Is this a short U or a long U? Short. Good job. High five.
So, yeah, that lasts for about 30 minutes, but there's a lot of different activities that we can do within that time. We use the whiteboards, make them fast, and I used one of your things today because I like that. You have them come up to the board. So we're learning from each other all the time.
So
This would be the 5th grade class.
yeah, so just so you can see quickly the difference between sitting in first grade classroom compared to what the kind of work the 5th graders do with us. We wanted to put there's 2 short videos here for 5th grade.
There's something tricky about that. I can't remember if I told you that on that last Wednesday we worked together. What do you know about syllables and vowels? Yes, sir. All words have vowels. You are absolutely right. There's one more thing I wanted to add to that. Anybody have an idea before? Yes, sir?
Why can be announced to the about or
Now we do know word study. Wise can be even more. You're right. You guys, every syllable has to have a vowel. Every syllable has to have a vowel.
And so this next one is just then putting that into action.
Because you love this word.
Etymology.
Etymology. Go ahead. They have fun words. I had to look up etymology. Oh, and there's your wine theory right there too. Well, that's right, you're clapping out the syllables. I do that all the time. Testing my theory. Check him out too, is he right with those syllables? It's 5, right? Maybe. My theory is still correct?
Yes.
So, you mentioned the Y earlier. There it is, 2 times, right? acting as that model, right? How did you do? Nice job. Nice. You guys are amazing at this breaking of the syllables. So, yeah, next, like on Wednesday, we're gonna play a game, and I'm just gonna give them the definitions, and they have to come up with the word that matches the definition. So that's the different types of activities. You can see that we've had to kind of change things as we move developmentally through the building, what they could do. So, in conclusion, it's still a work in progress. At this time, we're trying to work as a team and figure out how we're going to hold the accountability now. You know, the students are interacting. We do have evidence that they're taking on the learning. Now we need to hold them accountable within their writing to make sure that they're using these patterns and words that they've learned now. And it's going to be tricky, especially if there's some bad habits in place, you know, as we've moved up the grade levels and haven't had this differentiated word study instruction. So, so we'll continue to collect our data and work together to come up, we're changing it all the time to make it better for students and figure out what they know. So,
Anyone else say anything to add?
anything to add?
The only thing I would add is this, because you know, I took quite a few videos, but what this is really clear, and I've been in so many classrooms seeing this take place throughout the school. The kids are having fun. It's some of the most fun we see them having with their learning that I've seen in quite some time, especially with writing and literacy. It's breaking that apart. They love being able to manipulate and grab and use the letters. And to me, that's what's really exciting, especially because when I was with fifth grade and just asked them, you know, one of the videos that I had that didn't make it in here was asking them, how do you feel about this? And there's an overwhelming response of, this is fun. I mean, and we're talking about kids breaking down words into syllables, and they're saying this is fun, right? And that's fifth graders saying that, so I thought that was pretty powerful.
Very good.
So Kim, do you notice that, like, are they making more progress with their reading levels, just of understanding the sounds and how they go together? Are you seeing, or no?
Yes, no, actually, the reading is, you know, in the breaking of the words and looking for parts of words, we have noticed an increase in their skills there. And we're like, is it because of this? You know, we're really using that spelling inventory to collect the data. But right now I'm testing for second round students, and I've not had this before, but I've been testing, and I've had two that have discontinued second round already, and we've not even started, and they were the pool that we thought would need that service. So I'm looking right now for some students in our building that really need reading recovery as first graders. So that was really cool, but yet.
So that makes sense, what she was saying, that kids who we thought originally would automatically go into reading recovery second round, she went back to test them mid-year, and nope, they have made so much growth since the beginning of the year that, no, they don't need reading recovery.
I had Michelle come in and observe. I said, listen to this child orchestrate as he reads. And she was like, because I thought I was losing it. I was like, oh my gosh, he was in my small group. What did I miss? And he was able to orchestrate and break words apart. And we know that it has to do with the guided reading in our classrooms too.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good positive things happening in literacy, and we're seeing that effect. So it's pretty cool.
Is this new this year for you guys? Is this the first year you've done it? I've noticed, I have a first grader at Walters and a third grader, and my third grader in first grade is an amazing year for growth in reading, which you guys know. And I saw an amazing change. So my first grader was, he's like, I have this take-home book I need to read. And I saw this book, and I was like, okay, we're going to struggle with all this word. And it's amazing what he's able to read. He's reading words I never thought he'd be able to read as a first grader. It's been truly awesome to see his growth in a few months with this. So.
Thank you.
Yep, we're proud of them all.
So March is reading month, correct?
Yes.
So do you guys have some special stuff in mind for reading month then, centered around all of this
So
great work?
we've got a whole lot of stuff planned for March's reading month. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. That's coming out. We're still finalizing it, but yes, we're just praying for the final touches on it, but quite a bit of stuff coming. Yep.
And I think I saw the after-school program too, right? That's starting
Ignite.
up.
Yep.
Right?
That's been going now for a couple weeks for us. Yep.
Couple weeks, okay.
Mhm.
Very cool.
Good,
Thank you.
thank you. Brent, could you turn that up?
Yes.
Dr. Davis, are you planning on rolling this out at all the other elementary schools next year?
It's gonna come to the literacy council, and we're gonna talk about how that gets rolled out, yeah.
My first grader's going, can I start reading chapter books? He
Thank
said
you.
he has to have 3 chapter books, and I'm
Thank
like,
you,
I don't
guys.
think you're ready. And then he's ready. Like, alrighty, he wants 3 chapter books. He's like, I need books that have chapters, Dad. I want every chapter. I'm like, no, you need like 10-page words. Yeah, and I'm like, and he's ready. He's retaining it. He's understanding it. It's crazy.
So we'll move on to 5 consent agenda, the minutes, expenditures, personnel, and others. Do we want to lump these all together?
Yeah,
Okay. Can you give me the background?
yes. I'm gonna skip over it. Well, you got the minutes in your board packet, financials are included. Employment offers have been accepted pending your approval, which will be presented in a second. At the February 10th, 2020 board work session, the board discussed the superintendent's evaluation and when compensation changes could occur. It was determined the superintendent's evaluation would be moved this current year in 2020 from being by March 31st to being completed by December 31st. Expectations will begin that process in the first part of November. And the changes to the superintendent's compensation would occur following approval of the teacher's contract, which has always been the case. F is the adoption of the school of choice resolution, which is required to accept applications for non-resident students who reside within the ISD and contiguous intermediate school districts for enrollment. I have the resolution here. I'm going to take a second to read. Whoever moves and supports this consent agenda will be listed as moving and supporting this resolution, okay? It is hereby resolved by the Marshall Board of Education of Marshall Public Schools that the Board of Education, exercising the option permitted by Section 105 and Section 105C of the School Aid Act of 1979, as amended by Public Act 300 of 1996 and PA 119 of 1999, will, for the purposes of Section 105 and 105C, accept applications of non-resident students who reside both within the Calhoun Intermediate School District and contiguous intermediate school districts for enrollment in the Marshall Public Schools for the first and second semesters of 2020 and 2021 school year, and will operate a schools of choice program in the district in compliance with the statutory requirements of Section 105 and 105C. And then G, Carolyn Gillig has served on the Albion District Library Board since 2015. Her term expired this past December. Ms. Gillig has agreed to continue serving on its board as Marshall Public Schools representative. A renewed appointment would have her serving through December 2023 when the term would expire. Let me just read something from Cynthia Stanzik from the library in Albion. Our bylaws require appointments of representatives by the participating districts, which are the City of Albion, Albion Township, and Marshall Public Schools, as successor to the Albion Public School System for the portion of the district within Sheridan Township, as all other MPS areas are currently served by other libraries. MPS appoints 2 positions of our 7-member Board of Trustees. Kim Arntz was reappointed to one of these positions in 2018 with her 4-year term expiring December 2021. If you recall, that was presented to you back then. Carolyn Gillig was appointed in 2015, I believe, by the APS Board of Education, which is accurate, and her term technically expires on December of 2019. That concludes our consent agenda.
It is a recommendation of the superintendent, the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Thank you.
Motion.
Support.
Any discussion? We'll start with Richard.
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to the report of the superintendent. recognition and new hires.
You wanna hold on to that? Sure. New hires, Craig Davis fills the position of bus driver in the Transportation Department. Mr. Davis is a graduate of Port Jervis Senior High School in Port Jervis, New York. He holds an associate's degree from Hudson Valley Community College with a major in radiologic technology. Victoria Williams fills the position of special education paraprofessional at Marshall High School. Ms. Williams is a graduate of Michigan Center High School. She obtained her associate's degree in nursing from Kellogg Community College, followed by a bachelor's degree in nursing from Siena Heights University. Congratulations to both of them coming on board. We have one retirement to announce. Carolyn Amos was hired into the district in August 2016 as the family interventionist at Harrington Elementary. Ms. Amos worked for Albion Public Schools before joining Marshall Public Schools. She recently retired from the district with 3.5 years of service on February 18th, 2020. And we wish her all the best in what she's going to go into retirement with.
Move on to B, leadership team reports.
You have in your packet leadership team report. Nice thick packet, lots of good things happening. I mean, if you have any particular questions, but I'm going to highlight a few things. One is we made it to Space Camp, down and back, with some really marvelous pictures. Kelly, outstanding stuff with you guys. Another thing I want to highlight is Binder Park Zoo experience happened at the end of January and 1st of February for Hughes Elementary, which was quite a week, I'm sure, in the zoo, and I'm really happy that they continue to be able to do that. A couple things that remind us of spring is we have kindergarten roundup, we've got Girls on the Run, and of course we have March is Reading Month. So those are really great things coming up for all of our elementaries. We also have our 4th grade swimming program. So in case the public doesn't know, our 4th graders go over and get exposed to swimming, safety, water safety, and so forth at our high school swimming pool. Want to talk about FFA leadership. You saw the announcement about our teams qualifying and going on to state competition. Really proud of our middle school and high school teams. They did a great job. Couple other things. Dave Turner took the time to really put out a nice piece in there on the ID cards and lanyards at the high school. Would you please read through that process and make sure you're familiar with, number one, the rationale for why we were moving forward with that, and also a number of things he's been doing with his our students and staff to make sure that that's going smoothly and answer any questions people may have.
One question on the, Dave, and I may have missed this at some point in time, but did that same rationale about the lanyards go home to the families of students so that parents and older siblings, younger siblings, and even the students currently at the high school who are still like, why do we have to wear these kind of thing, did that go home to them as well?
Weekly updates,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Not in a special letter though, just in weekly updates.
Just in the weekly updates, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to bring your attention to the MYCA. After our acclimation graduation, which was the first 2 weeks that the cycle went in, we had 140 cadets in cycle 42 coming out successfully, which is great. That's one of the larger classes we've had make it through acclimation period. Also, we have 51 cadets that are in the Michigan Job Challenge program. And some of the things our cadets do are Lions Winter Camp for the Blind, which is really an excellent camp over in Battle Creek, as well as the Battle Creek Food Bank. They are constantly out there doing physical training, doing work on academics, and doing community service, and we're really proud of that program. And I think finally, well actually, yeah, I'm going to call it finally, we are engaged with representing and focusing in on Say Something, which is a safety initiative that was done by Sandy Hook Promise Group. There's a lot of structure to that. There's a couple videos that are going to be seen. There's a whole lot of structure that Chad Holt has put together. which has been really great. Letters to the staff, letters to parents, some news clips, social media posts that we're putting up there. We're talking constantly about it. It's very much akin to Okay to Say, but this is an acknowledgement of Sandy Hook and the extreme efforts that they've gone through in trying to recover, find positives out of the tragedy they experienced nationally, and get this message across to every school we possibly can. So we're proud members of that initiative. And then the last thing I want to tell you is that there was a perception survey that was issued out anonymously to parents and to students in each of our buildings. And those results are being compiled and shared with administration, and you'll get some ideas about what that outcome looked like when we get done with it. Any other comments, questions? Anything I missed?
Yeah, just, you had mentioned the Girls on the Run, and I didn't know that they were starting some boys elementary school running programs. Did that, if that's had an uptake?
And there's a fall cycle for the Boys on the Run. It's called Let Him Run. They do have a spring cycle. We run that program at Oregon. I don't know about the other elementaries, but the spring cycle for Let Him Run starts later than Girls on the Run because the ending 5K is later in May.
Anything else?
Yeah, so you mentioned the information about the ID being in here. And there's a couple of things that I still don't know. Like, for example, the students are saying that they are being charged if they need a new ID, but this doesn't say that, and I haven't seen that in any of the updates, so I'm just wondering if that's the case, and then if so, how much they're being charged, and like what happens if a student, forgets their ID and they need their ID to get lunch and they don't have the money to get a new one if they're being charged for it. So that's just a question that I don't see answered.
Okay. I do think I would know the answer to that, but I'm going to yield to Dave. Dave, you want to address us?
I'd like a rash, yes. So, in terms of students that don't have an ID, they forget it at home, whatever it might be, we do make them a new one. It takes about 3 minutes to make that. They let us know first thing in the morning if they forget it. We do charge them $2 for that because that's the actual, it's $1.90 and actually for us to make it. So there is an extra dime that the school is profiting, I guess, from that. However, we do make that. We give them a lanyard too so they can wear it. What we tell the students regarding, and there's also $2 for the lanyard. However, students with lanyards, they can bring the extra lanyard that they maybe have at home, and they can give it to us the next day, and we refund them, or we take that off of their fines and fees, because we're not expecting them to pay for it right then and there. The logic behind this is, if we didn't make the cards or the IDs for them that specific day, we would have 50, 100, 200 students every day saying, I forgot it, I forgot it, I forgot it, and then at that point, then they're not bringing their IDs. Simple logic. People do not change their behavior unless they're inconvenienced. The inconvenience is they get a second ID. And we always tell them, take this second ID, keep it in your locker. That way, you don't have to worry about forgetting one that you maybe left at home, in your car, or wherever. And we do allow students that they do forget it in their car to go to their car and get it, or they forgot it in their locker, go to your locker and take care of that. Now, as far as lunches, we've not had any student unable to eat because they didn't have their ID card. We've either always been able to make the ID card for them, or I personally went up to the cash register and there is a way that we can key that in using just a keyboard. But we're not allowing students to necessarily key their numbers in because as soon as they learn that, then they know that they don't need their ID cards. One thing I do want to add to it, since we've been using the cards, we were able to add some functionality. The kiosks where students come in, before they would have to type in all their information. We've just upgraded our card reader so the students can take their card, scan it in, and that information automatically populates in our school Safe ID kiosk, thank you very much for the language there, the kiosk. We've implemented, all kids can get food from their vending, from the vending machine, using their IDs and their pins. We've, I know for some individuals, they're not a fan of it, get it. Others, it has really made and simplified the ability for them to access things here in school. So just like anything else, we're starting with it. We have slow rolled this bad boy, and we're getting pretty good compliance at this point.
So thank you for that information. I also would suggest that there's something that explicitly tells parents that there's a cost behind this. Because like I said, I wouldn't know about that had it not been for students. And I have seen probably 2 or 3 different notices that there's gonna be some ID changes and that there's gonna be requirements, but nothing about a cost. So I think that'd be really important to let parents know specifically what those rules are around when and where they're supposed to have it specifically, and then also like what the cost of it is to replace it. I think that'd be really important.
I'm gonna double check my weekly updates while we're meeting here, because I think I put that in there. I could be wrong, but I'm gonna look while we're moving on to the next topic.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Anything else? Bill, you ready to go on?
Yep. Thank you for coming. Sorry I was late. I'm going to move on to C, Kellogg Community College press release.
You have the press release in front of you, I believe, in your board packet. It's called Upgrades at KCC's Eastern Academic Center campus in Albion to be completed this spring. Real excited about this announcement. John Hendler in the Advisor Chronicle posted it on the back page of their most recent edition, just simply because it celebrates a lot of the vision and innovativeness that goes on with KCC and what they've been bringing to the Eastern Calhoun area. It also celebrates our partnership. It mentions Marshall's Cronin Foundation contributing a sizable amount of money to the upgrades. The uniqueness of the upgrades are really outstanding, with welding lab put into the Eastern Academic Center that has like 5 different locations for welding in there. The CNC for machining, the computer aided design, or CAD, put in there for manufacturing, the mechatronics certifications and career path for mechatronics, which is outstanding, and the link, most importantly, between the Eastern Academic Center and now the Marshall Opportunity High School or community campus in Albion, where we've got the Advanced Manufacturing Assembly Lab, we've got CAD, we have mechatronics launch, which gets them geared up and ready to go into these college level courses that KCC is going to offer. And it's also expanded to not just do it with their students in early college, but it's available for dual enrollment for high school students across the board, as well as young adults and older adults that are looking for retraining for employment and certification training. And it's right in our backyard between us and Albion. It's just really an outstanding improvement. And kudos to Mark O'Connell and all those in KCC that helped make that possible as well.
Thank you for rolling that out. Ancient issues, I think, was very well received last Friday in the presentations. Thank you for doing that. And it feels like there's a really cool marketplace piece about this, because we know we're over on Facebook how high schools are ignoring the skilled trades. I mean, the folks on the skilled trades, I mean, my gosh, we're right in the middle of it. I mean, we're doing exactly what we should be doing at very exciting.
And you know, I don't know if you're aware, but you know, Ben Wallace being he was our director, now he's our principal of our non-traditional programs. And part of what Ben is doing also is supporting KCC to be able to go out and market these programs and get our local districts connected. Not necessarily not having to force them through our middle college, but if they want to go that direction, they can. They can go to our manufacturing assembly training at the Albion campus, and they can do that just at cost. We're not looking to take anybody's foundation allowance from them. But if a student wants to go full board into our middle college, so be it, they can do that and they can transfer in. Other than that, they can hit this as they need to. Every school in the area, including into Jackson County with Concord and Springport, those schools can choose to come to the Eastern Academic Center for that training. And yeah, so it's exciting to expand that whole initiative.
Randy, do you know if a student's interested in one of those programs, when that deadline is that they need to make those decisions with their families and get enrolled and get signed up?
Sure, yeah. If they want to get into the early college, they have to make a commitment prior to the beginning of their junior year. So now's a key time. Just having a conversation with a parent tonight about that. By the end of their sophomore year, they really need to make a decision that that's where they want to go, because they have to commit to that 13th year of high school, or that 5th year of high school, to be able to complete the program.
Do we have anything planned specifically to let students and families know that this is that time that they need to start thinking about it? If that's, you're shaking your head,
Yeah, we have numerous opportunities. Dave, you want to say anything to that?
Absolutely. So our counselors right now are meeting with freshmen, sophomores, and juniors about next year's schedule. And within that, they're talking about all the pathways that are available: Math Science Center, CACC, early college, and the traditional high school environment. So all of that information is being shared with the students. I think tomorrow are the sophomores, if I'm not mistaken. And so anyway, students are getting that. I've had at least one student that I'm aware of, the family posted on Facebook, hey, my kid's been accepted to early college. You saw that too, yeah. So it's happening right now. And it's an ongoing process. Just because the student decides right now, I want to be traditional, and then later on in the school year, they're like, oh, you know what, maybe I'll do early college. Yeah, we're going to make that available for everybody. And we did talk about this with all the freshman parents incoming, the 8th graders.
Okay.
We talked about that with them so that they knew the 4 different pathways.
Will a reminder go out to sophomore and junior parents, as far as like a reminder, just that that's coming up? Because I know sometimes the gap between what you tell your students at school and what the counselors are doing and what's getting communicated at home doesn't always make it there, so.
That will be in the weekly update. I just asked last week for the counselors to put together what actually is the scheduling process, because parents don't necessarily know, and it's not on paper, and I asked if they had something to give to the kids on paper, because they'll hear something and forget.
Right.
And so it's not super detailed, just a bulleted item of, here's the process, this is what we do, so that as a parent you can know, and you're gonna get that electronically. And Greg reminded me, we just mailed something home, it should be coming home, regarding scheduling type stuff. Actually, it's about dual enrollment, whether or not students are eligible for dual enrollment.
Perfect, thank you.
Everyone should have received an email on that, if you have a kid here already at the high school level. I do have an answer to that other question though.
I don't think you can see him, but he's got his.
All right, so the first weekly update that included the cost for ID cards. Additional one was back on December 16th, and at that time it was $5 because we were going to have to use Prater to reproduce them. Since, and we also, on the 16th we did that, the January 6th it was also in there again, said $5, we changed it to $2 on the 13th because we were able to use, we found that we had a ID maker in our school. So, December 16th weekly update, January 6th weekly update, and the students also received the weekly updates too. January 13th, changed the price, January 20th, and January 27th, all in the weekly update included with the price, and also was in announcements for students. So,
good.
It's in there like radar.
Thanks, Dave.
Mr. Turner, I just have one other question about that. What happens if they forget their ID when they're going to an evening event and need that ID to get home on the bus?
Get home on a bus?
My child told me that he couldn't go on the bus because he needed his ID. It was like for a pep band thing, and then he did find his ID, an old ID in his locker, so he did
I
make it
know
home.
nothing about that. I've never stated any, the only thing I asked that is that if we have dances, then I want students to bring their IDs, and it's more so for, because we're gonna try and do some after athletic events, and that way it will help us identify who's actually a student and not a 8th grader or 7th grader trying to sneak in, or someone that's not one of our students at all. So we've never said anything about a student needing it for transportation.
Yeah, and we don't require their ID. For middle schoolers, we do require that they have a pass for the late shuttles here. Athletes get on, band students are allowed on, just without a pass, but other students like staying after for study, they have to get a pass from the teacher that they're studying with. So I don't know where that came from.
I will say, we're not there yet, and the scanners are not really, they're not super cheap, but it would be super incredible to have them in all the classrooms. That way we would have 100% accurate attendance for kids coming in classrooms. Just as being here at the middle school and also at the high school, teachers taking accurate attendance, I don't get it, it's a struggle. Anyway, moving on.
Got enough.
Come on, Randy. Put that in my lines.
Any other questions?
I'm joking.
Okay, we're gonna move on to discussion, letter A, 2020-2021 school calendar.
We're still currently negotiating with the union on the school calendar for the 2020-2021 school year. We have hoped to finalize it on March 3rd, but just August 26th is the first day of instruction. I want to go ahead and put that out there again. And we're hoping to be finalized after March 3rd.
Shooting for it. We'll let you know.
Any questions? Move on to B, postpone the March 9th, 2020 work session, combine it with the March 23rd, 2020 business session. One meeting to be held next month, March 23rd, 2020 combined work business session.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we reiterated that from my request last time. Thank you for your flexibility on that. We'll just put it all together and have one, right?
Questions?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to C, CISD general fund budget.
As of July 1, 2004, state law requires an intermediate school district to have its proposed budget reviewed by its constituent districts each year. The law requires that by May 1, the budget be presented to the constituent districts, and that by June 1, each constituent district adopts a board resolution expressing support for or disapproval of the proposed budget. The MPS board is being presented with the proposed CISD general fund budget for 2020-21 as required for review and discussion. A resolution will be brought before the board for action prior to the June 1 deadline. In your packet, you should have some of the preliminary, well, actually, it should be the overview of their budget. Oh, you handed it out, thank you. We review, you can review that all you need to. The superintendents at the ABCS meeting last Friday reviewed it in length in each of the cost centers, along with each of their proposed budgets, compared to what was actual for this year currently, and also what their fund balances are. So we're pretty familiar with it. Just know that we'll be bringing a resolution to you for approval in the future, unless you have any questions.
Do they typically make any changes from this time to the time it'll come in front of us again?
For the ISD, no.
Okay.
Normally it's not.
So this is pretty much what
Pretty much what they're talking
about. Any questions?
You know what the fund balance is?
Okay, we'll move on to number 8, action item, financial budget, approve a budget adjustment. Some background, Randy or Becky?
Each year, school boards are required to adopt budgets by June 30th. Assumptions are used when projecting revenues and expenditures. It is common to change projections based on events that occur after the budget is adopted. As a result, we typically will recommend 2 to 3 budget adjustments. This would be the first budget adjustment since the adoption of the original budget. So in your board packet, you have a one-pager that outlines the actuals that were actually from last year, where we finished off with the 14% fund balance, the 4.3. You're gonna go look at the budget, and then you're gonna see change in obviously our first budget amendment, which takes us down to about an 8% fund balance. Couple things that I wanted to highlight. We budgeted for assumption of 2,777 FTE with a per pupil foundation of 7,871. We didn't increase that per pupil foundation because we weren't aware of what that was going to be when we actually put the budget out back June. So we had a student count of 2,765 FTE. Which, that's not a head count, that's an FTE count, which is pretty good. In the declining enrollment, we're pretty steady. And then we have foundation allowance of $8,111. So when the state put the budget together this year, one of the things that we had in revenues that we received through state revenue, which was a revenue in and an expense out, was the 24C money, which is the MYCA's money on their side of how they represent it. So the money comes into the district, and then we push the money right back out to them. The state removed that from coming in on our state aid this year. It's really no cost change to the district, except for we didn't know that was going to happen. So my big deduction of the 1.4 in the community recreation, and then the state revenue, it all looks a little bit different because I had to take out the revenue and expense on that side. There are a couple other items on the state revenue side that we didn't get this year. 22N was money that was per pupil for high school. There was extra dollars for high school students. They didn't give us that money this year, which is about a $20,000 revenue to the district. And then the 104D money was eliminated also, which paid for our NWEA. So we still have the expense of NWEA, but we don't have the revenue from the state anymore for that. Highlighting down through the basic programs, we have an increase. We didn't budget for the extra 6th grade teacher. We have an expense for STAR here in the middle school that we didn't originally budget for. We're kind of hoping that the federal grant might be able to pick that up, but it wasn't there, so I'm going to make sure that I put that in there. That could be a cost savings later on down the line. We've had a few teachers off that we weren't expecting, so we've had some sub costs that we've had to put in there. Added needs, we have carryover for federal revenue, so you're going to see some increase in our federal revenue as well as expenses. That's a wash, revenue in, expense out, but it obviously is outlined within the expenses. Another larger increase is the operations and maintenance. We have a lot more building repairs this year that we're kind of going through. So we have that. Pupil transportation services. So we, for many years, and I don't know how many years, the ISD has been providing, our students have been getting on the Dean transportation buses. And we were not caught. We did not have an expense for that because they were just at the same spot, and so that has changed this year.
Let me define that a little more. Our special ed, our students with IEPs that are served within our district have been riding Dean buses to and from our buildings.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that changed, and so we are being billed for our special ed students. However, it's about a $100,000 expense, but we're reimbursed 85% of that. So the expense side is in there and the revenue side as well is on that. So you'll see that break through. Central support services, we had no capital outlay budgeted within for technology, so we put a $30,000 capital outlay budget in there, which we might need to come back for a little bit more. We're just kind of still looking at budget and how everything's kind of folding out and what parents' immediate needs are right now. We were kind of hoping to try to write a couple grants and see where those come in. So right now, we're looking at about an 8% fund balance. And I'll obviously bring another one back to you before the end of the year so we know what we're coming in at.
So before I say it's my recommendation to accept this, I just want to say that the extreme variances that you see periodically through this report have to do with the fact that our budget wasn't approved by the state for a very long time versus approved in June, which has been occurring in the last 4 years. So with all the political stuff going back and forth between the Republican Party and the Democratic governor, we finally got to some closure, but it was quite late into the fiscal year.
It's actually 8 years.
Thank you, 8 years.
Two Republican governors.
My,
Sorry.
you don't have to drive home the point.
Becky, do you see that 85% reimbursement for the special ed services? Do you see that staying there, or do you think it's going to change?
I do, and actually a win for local school districts this year. The state put in an extra 2% in revenue for local school districts and ISDs as it pertains to special education costs. And so the ISD actually increased us this year to an 87% reimbursement for all the local school districts, which is actually quite helpful. And I think projecting out, we are looking at an 85%, the
5 year at least.
5 year at least. They do have quite a bit of a healthy fund balance.
26.5%.
So it is, it's a win. I brought it up to Corey and Terrence about us getting the 87% because legislation said 2% was supposed to go to local districts, and so they increased it to 87% this year, which is really great. It's about $50,000 in additional revenue for the district.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Can we get a recommendation from you?
It's my recommendation that the budget adjustments be approved as presented.
May I entertain a motion, please?
Move approval.
Support?
Okay, discussion. Any other questions? I think you covered everything for us, so
Thank you.
it's always good when the number looks better, so. Okay, who's it? Shauna, start with Shauna.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Move on to number 9, action item financial other, approve leasing 2 buses for transporting Michigan Youth Challenge Academy students.
The district submitted a bid notice to lease 2 new 84-passenger regular education school buses limited to 20,000 miles per year per bus. Bids were due on February 18th, 2020 at 2 p.m. 2 vendors responded. The Transportation Director is proposing awarding the bid to Midwest Transit to lease 2 84-passenger regular education buses from Midwest Transit at the cost of $28,625 per bus per year for 2 years. It is the recommendation of the superintendent that action item financial other be approved as presented.
May I entertain a motion, please?
Move for approval.
Support.
Okay, discussion. So we got 2 bids.
Yeah, it's all good. We get to buy these buses when we get done with the lease.
So how does that work for us? Because you were saying that they changed the way that we get and give the NYCA money.
So the way NYCA works, and you can slow me down if you need to, their funds were about 1.5 money. So that 1.5 million, sorry, that is their revenue. And their expense that we would send to them was the 1.5. We still get our per pupil dollars. So the $8,111, we still receive that as revenue in on the kids that they service. And then we have our own, it's within the GL, but within the accounting, we track all of their expenses.
Okay.
And so that's part of that goes through it.
Okay.
And these buses are for daily, weekly?
They're for the Career Center run. that they do, and then, obviously, if they take any special trips or anything, they use their buses. And, we used to run 3 buses, but we're gonna do the 2 buses, so that, bigger buses, so we only have to have 2 drivers, since the shortage of drivers is a problem for the district. We're able to do it with the 2 buses, and they have a couple vans sometimes if they need to. So, that's why we're looking at bigger buses.
And the mileage, that number's a number you know works, no problem?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Did I get everything?
And the cost is all attributed to that.
Yes,
program.
yes.
Yep.
Sure, agree.
It's all good.
Any other questions? Okay, start with Brent.
Yes.
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 Okay. Move on to public comment. Anyone can speak. We ask you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Seeing none, we'll move on to board member comments for which no action may be taken at this meeting. Anybody have anything they want to share?
May I remind you, this is the largest or the longest list of activities. Kimberly decided to give this to you up front so you can put it all on your calendars, because it's gonna be a real busy, end of the year. Also, Kimberly's gonna be out this week, so if you need to reach us, we're gonna be covering it through Becky's office and my office for anything that comes up this week. So pay attention to these things are important.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.